I own 1,685 shares of SCHD. Not a round number, not a hypothetical, not if you'd invested $10,000. This is my actual position. And today, I'm showing you exactly what that number turns into, what it's worth, what it pays me, and what it took to get here. And by the end of this video, you should know if owning SCHD of any size position is right for you too. Let's start with the basics. At today's price of $34.14, 1,685 shares are worth about $57,000. This is my actual account after hours on August 10th, 2026. SCHD's current annual dividend on a trailing 12-month per share basis is $1.05. If you multiply that out across 1,685 shares, that's $1,769 per year in dividend income from this one position alone, paid out in quarterly installments. That's not a projection. That's what actually shows up in my account 4 times a year, whether the market's up or down. You might be asking how I got here. I didn't just wake up with 1,600 shares in my account. I've been buying consistently a few $100s here and there over the past few years. With dividend reinvestment turned on, if you've been following the channel for a while, you've probably seen bits and pieces of this build in other videos, but this is the full picture right here in one place. Here's the part I don't always think about. Some of these shares came directly from money I put in, of course, but a meaningful chunk came from the dividend itself, reinvesting back into more shares. That's what the compounding part actually does. It's not just something you read about. So $1,700 a year doesn't sound like life-changing money on its own. And I want to be honest, I don't want to oversell it. But here's the context that matters. This is money that shows up regardless of what I do. I don't have to sell a single share to get it. I don't have to time anything. I don't have to follow charts daily. It's just there every quarter, and it's grown every single year I've held the position. Because SCHD's whole methodology is built around companies that grow their dividends, not just maintaining them. And right now, I'm reinvesting every dividend. I'm still in the accumulation phase, so I'm reinvesting everything, letting compound interest do the work, because I don't need the income yet. If I switched, taking a cash dividend of around $150 a month, showing up in my checking account, that's certainly not enough to live on by itself. But it's a real, tangible number that keeps me investing. And it keeps growing and compounding in on itself. I'm not going to pretend I know exactly what's going on in 5 or 10 years and how SCHD is going to do, because it depends on so many macroeconomic factors. But here's a rough, honest projection. I really enjoy Drip Calculator, as you can put in your actual numbers and extrapolate them into the future. I want to be fully transparent and say that I usually use much worse numbers when making projections, because I think the historical norms are probably a best case or almost best case scenario. SCHD has a 10-year dividend growth rate of 10.25%, which is why it attracts many investors. Though over the past year, it's actually been an abysmal 2.25%, which is shaking out a lot of weak hands, and that's understandable. But looking at the 1-year total return of over 20%, we can see that the combination of growth as well as dividend growth is actually working just as planned. But this year, most of that's come in the return of price return, not dividend growth. So for my example on Drip Calc, I'm going to use 7% projected dividend growth rate and 8% price returned, even though since inception, it's actually returned closer to 13% price appreciation. I like to be cautious, and showing a more worst case than historical, I'm usually pleasantly surprised when I beat my projections. So using our worst case scenario, starting with a balance of $57,000, after 5 years, our starting balance will be $87,000. We'll be up to 1,870 shares. And our yield on cost will have increased from around 3% to 4.38%. Our annual dividend will have increased from $1,700 all the way up to $2,500. And then at the 10-year mark, our starting balance will be $148,000, while at the end of the 10-year mark, we'll have $164,843, ending with 2,187 shares and an annual dividend that's more than doubled at $4,000. And that's more of a worst case scenario. Just for fun, let's look at a more historical best case scenario. And honestly, depending on how the next 10 years go, the numbers could even be better than this. So we see at the end of the 10-year, this is assuming the historical 10.25% 10-year compound dividend growth rate, as well as a share price return each year of 13%, which I'll admit are very optimistic. But we can see that over 10 years, our ending balance is $260,000. Our ending shares are 2,121, and our annual dividend is an insane $5,000 with a yield on cost, assuming we bought today, of 8.75%. This is getting close to the territory of some of my favorite covered call investing funds. And the good thing is, these are quality dividend stocks that routinely grow their dividend. If you want your yield on cost to be close to 10%, you're going to need to wait. Some of my favorite things about SCHD. So this is a fun website I like to use that shows the fund overlap with some of my other favorite holdings. If you've been following the channel for a while, you'll know that my greatest holding is actually VGT. I have closing in on $300,000 in that fund, and SCHD complements that fund very, very well. We can see that it only has a 2% overlap, which is great. And if you're talking to a financial advisor or someone that's deep in the weeds and actually extrapolating these things, or an advisor that's deep in like a risk parity portfolio setup, they may say that overlap doesn't matter. Is it correlated to the market or is it correlated to other assets? And in looking at the correlation, we can see that historically it's usually around 65% up to around 90% correlated. But one thing I want to point out on this chart is since around 2025, it's actually been under 0.6% correlation, even down to under 0.2%, which is fantastic because when the technology sector sells off, I'd really like to open my account and see SCHD being that stable backbone that it's been for the past 5 years. It does sell off from time to time when there's a greater stock market sell off, but it's not always correlated to the technology sector, which has been ruling the day. So that's what 1,685 shares of SCHD actually looks like. Not a hypothetical. These are my actual numbers as of the time of recording on what the future looks like and why I continue to hold it, even though from a dividend appreciation standpoint, it hasn't had the best year, but it has made up for that in juicy price return. So if you're building a portfolio like this yourself, where are you at right now? Just starting or further along than me? Tell me your share count in the comments. I'm curious to know what everyone else is at. If you haven't already subscribed, hit that subscribe button. It would mean the world to me. And I'll see you guys in the next one.